The youngest president of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré, is carrying on the legacy of the late Thomas Sankara, who was slain for separating from the West. Traoré wants to build new ties with non-Western nations and remove Burkina Faso from Western influence in order to transform it into a great country. He aspires to use his nation's resources to the fullest in order to make it independent, wealthy, and strong. The West is concerned, though, because Traoré's plan would deny them access to the cheap natural resources they have been using. This is the exact reason why Thomas Sankara was assassinated. Traoré is not merely doing as Sankara does. By scaring and challenging the West, he is going even farther. He has forged partnerships with nations that the West views as adversaries, giving the impression that he is the most courageous and bold African leader. Ibrahim Traoré, the acting president of Burkina Faso, recently had a meeting with a Russian group to explore potential military collaboration. This encounter comes after Traoré's earlier discussions with Russian President Vladimir Putin at the St. Petersburg Russia-Africa Conference in July of last year. Yunus Bekirkorov, the Deputy Minister of Defense, led the Russian delegation. The attention is now on Burkina Faso's relations with Moscow as a result of these developments. This is particularly true in light of the nation's earlier this year expulsion of French troops, which sparked rumors about strengthening security relations with Russia. Go to www.yen.org for further UN films. Burkina Faso is willing to select allies depending on the advantages they provide, regardless of whether they are seen as Western adversaries, as seen by this alliance with Russia. Although directly aligning with Russia is perceived as a challenge to the West, Burkina Faso's dedication to its own interests is strengthened by this move. Russia and Burkina Faso met recently to talk about possible collaboration, especially in the military domain. The nations discussed providing Burkinab officer cadets and officers with training at several levels, potentially include pilot training in Russia. The official statement did not, however, confirm if military trainers from Russia will be sent to Burkina Faso. France used to train the majority of Burkina Faso's soldiers, which had a big impact on the military of the nation. With Russia involved, though, this dynamic might shift. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the acting president of Burkina Faso, attended the second Russia-Africa summit in St. Petersburg in July, with the intention of asking Russia for help in thwarting Islamist assaults. Russia sent the nation combat helicopters and weaponry in March. With an emphasis on Moscow's purposeful and proactive collaboration, the talks in St. Petersburg aim to establish new military and commercial accords to address Burkina Faso's security and development. On the other hand, some conjecture that Russia would be able to evade international sanctions through hidden agreements, especially in light of its departure from European markets. By formally designating Russia as its strategic friend, Burkina Faso is signaling to the West that it is willing to work with and conduct business with Russia, ignoring the prior call to denounce it in relation to the conflict in Ukraine. Given the rise of anti-French sentiment in some areas of the region, this move has raised questions regarding Burkina Faso's relationship with Moscow. After ending a deal with the US that had permitted France to fight armed groups in the nation since 2013, Burkina Faso withdrew French troops in February. Burkina Faso's military chief Traoré stated in a recent broadcast interview that his nation is not required to take a side in the current war. Instead, it will interact with every nation. Citing Russia as an example of a strategic ally, Traoré stated that Burkina Faso has new kinds of collaboration in addition to strategic allies. Russia's expanding influence in the Sahel and surrounding areas is becoming a source of concern for Western governments. To improve the nation's electrical supply, Burkina Faso's military authorities have, nevertheless, inked a deal with Russia to construct a nuclear power facility. Burkina Faso wants to attain 50% electricity availability in rural regions and 95% electricity access in urban areas by 2030. This agreement is a part of that ambition. In Burkina Faso, biofuels such as wood and charcoal are the main sources of electricity generation. 1/3 of the country's energy comes from oil products. The nation is now looking to nuclear energy to meet both its own and its neighbors' energy needs in order to address this issue. Although only South Africa produces nuclear power commercially at the moment, other African nations are progressively heading in that direction. In addition to signing an agreement to develop power plants in Nigeria, Russia is helping Egypt build a nuclear power facility. Sub-Saharan Africa continues to struggle with low electrification rates, with over 50% of the population living without access to power, despite recent improvements in the region's energy availability. Burkina Faso's choice to engage in nuclear power is indicative of its resolve to deal with this problem and supply its citizens' energy needs. Burkina Faso's military chief, Ibrahim Traoré. The possible contribution of North Korea to the improvement of Burkina Faso's security and general growth has been highlighted. Traoré confirmed, pointing to North Korea's considerable capabilities, that Burkina Faso's military still uses weapons that it acquired from North Korea in 1985. Given that many nations throughout the globe have cut diplomatic connections with North Korea because of its use of weapons, the restoration of diplomatic relations is considered a significant demonstration. Western inspiration. Traoré explained that Burkina Faso's armed forces actively use the weaponry, especially heavy armaments, and they are looking to obtain more to assist their continued efforts. This move comes after Burkina Faso declared in March that it had reached an agreement to name a North Korean ambassador, which might pave the way for the two countries to trade weapons. Building on previous connections of that kind, this accord signifies the apex of relations between Burkina Faso and North Korea. Former visit by Thomas Sankara to North Korea. Traoré highlights that Burkina Faso will work with any ally or country that supports them in their continuous fight for security and prosperity, but that they would always put their own interests first. It is significant to remember that the transfer of weapons to and from North Korea is forbidden under UN Resolution 2270. Although it is unclear how Burkina Faso plans to import weapons from North Korea, the move indicates that the nation is prepared. The nation's resolve to uphold its independence and make decisions that serve its interests as a whole. This emphasizes the idea of sovereignty by claiming that African nations have the autonomy to determine their own foreign policy. Ibrahim Traoré's strategy, which emphasizes Burkina Faso's independence and variety of partners, marks a break from other African leaders who might have been swayed by outside powers. His goal is to carry on the heritage of Thomas Sankara, who sadly perished while promoting similar ideas. Known as Africa's Che Guevara, Thomas Sankara brought about drastic changes while in office. Among these reforms were initiatives to end foreign debt, become self-sufficient in food, lessen the influence of the West, increase literacy rates, empower women, and advance social equality. A coup in 1987 ended Sankara's plans for Burkina Faso. Captain Ibrahim Traoré focuses on gaining control in order to protect himself, since he understands how difficult it will be to implement drastic reforms. Traoré remarked that since Islamist violence in Burkina Faso is still a threat, security must come before elections. His dedication to security is consistent with his original plan to increase security within 2 to 3 months of taking office. Additionally, Traoré seeks to answer the economic conundrum that Africa faces, which is that while having an abundance of natural resources, the continent is yet economically impoverished. His goal is to comprehend and transcend the phenomena known as the resource curse, which causes nations with abundant natural resources to frequently do poorly economically. In order to guarantee that the gains made from these resources primarily benefit the Burkina Faso people, Traoré intends to recapture the country's gold mines. Ibrahim Traoré is doing something unique by taking on the West, extraordinary enough for the West to get used to. As a result, the route may be difficult. However, African leaders who work to bring about significant beneficial change in their countries frequently face harsh consequences, such as being removed from office or even assassinated. Leaders like Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso and Muammar Gaddafi of Libya took up their positions of authority with the goal of upending the social, political, and economic systems that were in place in their respective nations. Their drive came from a desire to enact significant changes and deal with enduring problems like foreign influence, poverty, and corruption. These laws frequently upended long-standing power relationships and special interests, upending the status quo. Several powerful groups, including foreign governments, international corporations, and domestic elites, opposed these leaders' attempts to carry out the reforms. Because the reforms, supported by figures like Gaddafi and Sankara, constituted a serious danger to the status quo, they were killed. A direct challenge to the interests of these external actors was one of their goals, along with reducing the influence of foreign governments and multinational companies on the resources and economies of their own countries. It had never occurred to anyone that these leaders, who were adored by their subjects, might be painted as dangerous. In order to generate resistance against these dictators, the West employed clandestine methods, which eventually led to violent overthrows or killings. With assistance from Western nations, Gaddafi was overthrown and killed in 2011 during the Libyan civil war. There were accusations of outside participation when Thomas Sankara was killed in a coup in 1987, which was headed by his close associate Blaise Compaoré. These presidents' experiences should serve as a caution to other African leaders who may wish to implement drastic reforms in their nations. They may be terrified of the dire repercussions that could occur, including being deposed, banished, or even slain. Ibrahim Traoré is adamant about restoring Burkina Faso's independence and bringing wealth to its people, in spite of this knowledge. He drove out Western forces and made it more difficult for them to replace him or carry out an assassination. In addition, he is daring the West fearlessly and forming relationships with nations that the West considers threats. Do you believe Ibrahim Traoré will be able to effectively undermine the influence of the West in Burkina Faso and throughout Africa? Or will the West seize control and surreptitiously undermine him? Tell us how you think Ibrahim Traoré can become a more powerful force in the area. Is it a wise move to form alliances with strong nations like China and Russia? Click the bell icon to subscribe to our channel and watch more videos similar to this one. We are presenting films to you on subjects that are frequently disregarded. I appreciate you viewing, and please return soon for more videos.